Hi, my name is Bianca, and this is my video reflection for Module 4, the economic dimension of cities. The first required material for this module was the Changing Economic Context of Cities chapter, which begins by sharing the idealized model of the pre-capitalist, pre-industrial city housing the small elite, while the larger groups of lower classes lived on the outskirts. The pre-industrial city was also known to have everything at a human scale and easily walkable. The industrial city in the 19th century came with the rich exchanging their central location for the peripheral location of the poor to live in the suburbs, which was due to the emergence of capitalism and the urban growth surge of that time. Around the same time, Karl Marx, Ford, and John Maynard Keynes formed major ideas about the capitalistic society, such as modes of production, mode of regulation, the regime of accumulation, and Keynesianism, all designed to make sense of the growing industrial and manufacturing city. Lastly, the chapter discusses a contemporary city, which introduces a neo-Fordist system, neoliberalism, free markets, and new industrial clusters. Following shortly after the growth of the contemporary city was the growth of globalization and new telecommunication systems that helped shape the world we live in today. It is interesting to reflect on the history of cities and how far we've come. For lesson 4.1, I chose the additional Washington Post article called Washington, A World Apart. The article introduces us to superzips, which are highly educated demographic clusters that show how this country is compartmentalizing itself into clusters of people with different backgrounds and worldviews. According to the article, Washington, D.C. has the largest collection of them in the U.S. The article ends with supporting evidence that social polarization is also becoming more prevalent through the trend of more people living in areas that are either poor or affluent, with the middle income communities declining. From my experience, this is very evident in Washington, D.C., where there are many elite and poor communities and less middle class. The first required material for lesson 4.2 was From a National Economy to a World Economy. This was a fascinating read that was written almost like an informal yet direct letter to America entering into a new era of globalization and how to remain competitive. It was almost like a wake-up call to me about how the economy is shifting to production sharing, deindustrialization of developed countries, and global interdependence. Although the reading is a bit dated, it still holds that the United States needs to embrace these new trends and welcome new adventurous technologies to stay at the top of the global economy. The second required reading was Are Green Cities Nice Places to Live? The article introduces an urban sustainability index that is based on a theoretically consistent and empirical measure of the quality of life. Ultimately, the author concludes that more greenness correlates to higher qualities of life in urban areas. Green accounting has been more popular but is limited due to the challenge of adequately quantifying urban sustainability. Existing sustainable indices are riddled with subjectivity and theoretical inconsistency, which make it hard to make planning and policy decisions based on them. The index this reading proposes abides by the generally accepted principles of scope and coverage and transparency and reproducibility in order to inform public policy discourse in a meaningful way. The last required video, titled America's Cities Have Always Been Changing and COVID Took Them to a New Direction, discusses how the coronavirus accelerated a population migration out of the large cities like New York City and San Francisco into smaller cities like Miami due to the rise of remote work possibilities and lower costs of living. The migration has had a major impact on large and small cities in regards to their urban development, housing prices, and traffic flows. Similarly, major tech companies have also been migrating out of large cities, opting for areas of the country such as Texas. Post-pandemic has also seen higher demand of more walkable cities due to the realization of how unsafe large city street networks are and the importance of quality of life. My final additional material is the Rise of Suburbs video, suggested by Professor Tirpak. In the video, Elizabeth Cohen discusses her concept of consumer's republic and how it refers to the reorientation in the America's economy and political culture towards an America built on mass consumption that began post-World War II. This led to the growth of the modern suburbs as we speak today. And it was interesting to discover that the passing of the GI Bill and National Highway Act of 1956 were key laws that solidified the life we live today in America. These are my reflections for the required and additional materials. Thanks for listening.